Okay, so it is 6 o'clock. All board members are present, both in person and virtual. So we will move on. There was 2 additions to the agenda, which we'll cover later. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Motion is second by Ron. Roll call vote.
Jacob,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Ron,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
and Cheryl.
Cheryl, are you available? Can you hear us?
Looks like she's muted.
Okay. Maybe just a no vote.
Okay. No, for
I'm gonna
sure.
text her and see if she's
Okay.
available.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Well, you did the roll.
Yeah, so the motion passes then, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, it's a little disappointing.
I had to think about.
I know, I'm
if
just
that
like,
was the roll
I'm so
call, I
used
was
to the other way,
supposed
so
to abstain
the
from.
motion passes. No public comment, so moving on to the consent agenda. Okay.
Couple of things that I'll just real quickly call out. You'll notice that there's less bills. I don't know, Cheryl, if she's available. Generally, she comes in and checks them in the morning, and when she hasn't been able to come in, she's checked them during the remotely. So I haven't heard any questions from her. The one area that I really do want to highlight and just take a second to pause is for our retirements. And if you've had an opportunity to read the letters of Diane, Kim, Dina, Becky, Karen, Shar, and Diane Miller-Gherkin, there's a lot of warmth, and they were really nice letters, and grateful for the work that they've been able to do for our students in Paynesville area schools. And I just want to take a second to say thank you for their service and their work. And so that's a big list. And so I wanted to take a second to call that out. And then you're also going to notice a new column that is leaves of absence with the new upcoming Minnesota paid leave. We do need to call out leaves of absence, but we also have to be very cautious of what's identified. So the recommendation has been just to identify how many leaves of absence are the board is approving, and then we have the appropriate documentation on file in the district office. So I would stand for any questions on the consent agenda. I do see Cheryl has hopped on. Cheryl, is there anything you would like to call out for bills?
Yeah, I finally got on. I finally figured out how to work it.
Okay, sounds good.
No, I did go through the bills remotely. There was a pretty short list this month. There wasn't really much to call out.
Great.
Okay, hearing no questions, looking for a motion to approve.
Make motion.
Motion by Thomas,
Second.
second by Bruce. Roll call vote.
Ron,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Abstain.
Bruce. Oh,
Aye.
Thomas,
That's okay. You can put me down for 2, huh?
He's voting on my behalf.
Thomas,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
and then we got Ron.
No,
you had
And
Gerald.
Gerald.
You did. Gerald says aye.
Cheryl.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
This is all you. We've become rusty since COVID, haven't we? Yes.
Noting the one abstain, motion carries. Moving on to the communication items.
So revenues and expenditures, as Cheryl noted, it is a really short month, and so there is nothing to summarize at this point in time. So the next revenues and expenditures will be reviewed. We'll review 2 months in January. So I just want you to know that. We don't have any student representatives. I'll just, acknowledge the weather and the demands of activities for our student representatives. And I didn't receive any reports from them. So I would go on to look to you for organization or committee reports.
I was just gonna say negotiations are still progressing on that end, and I don't know if anybody other committees have met.
Yeah, this is Gerald, West Central Ed District. We had an emergency meeting last night, just to go through, take a look at the contracts that they have, and to approve those. So we did for the teachers, also for the
Administrators?
yeah, administrator, yeah, and then the last one, I was going to say the bookkeeper, but it's not the bookkeeper, so.
Business manager.
Business manager. There you go. Thank you. I'm glad you were there, Janelle. So
We'll figure it out.
yeah. But other than that's it. Then we do have an upcoming one, possibly tomorrow, for the staff development. We'll see how the weather plays for that.
Yep.
Any other ones? Hearing nothing, moving on, no old business. Moving on to new business, the truth and taxation hearing informational.
Okay, so Steve Humper is available online with PMA Financial. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and Steve is going to share his screen and walk through our truth and taxation information.
Wonderful, thank you. I should have tested this before because now I'm having, oh, here we go. Now I figured it out, I think.
Okay.
All right, can you see that now, Janelle, and everybody else?
Yes, you can.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here virtually, I guess. I miss seeing you all in person. I've done this for many years now on behalf of the district. So happy holidays to everyone first, before I forget to say that. So tonight, we're going through the truth and taxation. You're having your hearing, which is a requirement. There we go. So what has to happen is you must have your meeting between November 25th and December 30th, and it has to be at 6 p.m. or later. So you're meeting that requirement. Can be part of a regularly scheduled board meeting, and you have that right now. So that meets that requirement. And we need to discuss your 2026 budget. So that's the current fiscal year that you're in, the school year that you're in right now. And we also need to discuss the tax levy that you're proposing to levy onto taxpayers for taxes that are payable in 2026, which is for your next school year budget, 2026-27. And then before you approve the final levy, which you'll be doing shortly after this presentation, you have to allow for any public to have comment if they so choose to do so. So we will start with the first requirement, and that's going over your fiscal year 26 budget. So remember, this is the budget of the school year you're in right now. You have 6 different funds: the general fund, the food service fund, the community service fund, the building construction fund, a debt service fund, and an internal service fund. The 3 bolded funds, general fund, community service fund, and debt service fund, are the only 3 funds that actually have a tax levy component to them. So we'll certainly focus on that when we get to the levy. This probably looks very familiar to board members. This is the budget that you would have taken action on prior to June 30th of 2025, for the current school year that you're in right now. You'll notice it's a fairly balanced budget. There's a little bit of a planned deficit spending in your general fund. So you're using some of your fund balance to, cover the expenses for this year. But most of the funds are, fairly well balanced. When we look at Minnesota school funding, sometimes this is a little bit of surprise to residents, and that's that the tax levy itself is a very small percentage of the total school budget. The largest source of funding is state aid. And when we look at it for your district, you can see that 65% of all the funding for your school district comes from state aid. A very small portion, 3%, comes from federal. And then 21%, which is what we'll be focusing on here next, is coming from taxes that you're levying on local taxpayers. You can see that of that revenue, 82% goes to your general fund, and most people would consider the general fund all the operations of the district, and that includes all instructional, so your teachers and your aides, but it also includes your building expenses and your transportation expenses, your utility expenses, your textbooks, your technology, etc. So most people consider that like doing business, classroom expenses, the cost of educating your students, which of course is a business that you're in. So 82% of all of your revenue that you generate goes to your general fund. When we look at the expenses in your general fund, this pie chart is actually, it's parsed out according to state law of how districts across the state are mandated to code their expenditures. So it can be a little bit misleading. The largest chunk there you see at 41% is for elementary and secondary instruction. But there's other pieces of the pie that really are classroom expenditures as well. For instance, the vocational educational instruction, your special education instruction, your instructional support services, all those add up into what most people would consider directly classroom related expenditures. And if I add those up, 63% of all your expenses are going directly to the classroom. And that is, certainly as should be, is because that's, of course, the business that you're in, educating students. A quick highlight here for the school district. You had a rating call with Moody's. Moody's is a third party firm that assigns ratings to school districts as well as to corporations. And you were upgraded from an A1 to a AA3 back in March 3rd of 2022. And what's important for you as a district is that helps you borrow money, like when you issue debt, to build buildings or fix buildings up, et cetera, at a much lower interest rate. And one of the main reasons that you would be upgraded is because of the very good financial position you are in, which is certainly a direct result of management, both at the administrative level and the oversight of the school board. So that's something you should certainly take pride in. Now, when we focus on...
I'm sorry, I got a question.
Yeah.
Go back to that A1 and AA3.
Yep.
I realize that's a fancy number, but what is the scale? Is there something in between capital A1 versus, and then...
Yep, the top of the scale would be a triple A, so 3 A's, right? And then it would go to AA1, AA2, AA3, and then it would go to A1. And for a district your size, a AA3 is a very, very solid rating. It's probably the highest rating that you could reasonably get for a district that's in your size with your tax base would be a AA2, which means that it's really out of your control. The only way you probably could get a AA2 is if your fund balance was like over 50% or something, which is not something that you necessarily need to aim for. But it's based on the fact that, you only have so many taxpayers in your district, you only have so much commercial and industrial, and you're not going to be able to change that. And so you're almost at maxed out of where as high as you can possibly be. There's only 2 districts in the state of Minnesota that have a AAA rating. They're both very wealthy metro area districts.
What is the state app? I guess if you don't know the answer, I respect that. What is kind of the average for Minnesota? And then I don't need to know a name of a school, but what is the poorest average?
Well, no, but it wouldn't be a poorest average. It'd be
Poorest grade, I guess.
Yeah, the poorest grade rating would be in the B category, like a triple B, and that's considered that below investment grade. So people would not purchase their bonds, and there are some districts that have that. I would say the district, the average, is because most of the districts in the state are smaller districts, right? You have quite a few in the metro that are larger, but the vast majority of districts in the state are smaller. So they're in the A1 category, would be the majority of districts, just because of the size and the lack of commercial and industrial in most smaller districts.
Cheryl, you must have a television or something on in the background because we're hearing background noise.
My hubby's on the phone, but he's in a different room.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, I will keep going then. When we look at the property tax levy, we're going to look at two different timelines. Here's the one that the school district is really following. And that's, during the summer, Janelle and Amanda and your administrative staff work on providing the Minnesota Department of Education with a bunch of information that then gets fed into creating your tax levy. And some of that would be estimates on like how many students are you going to have, what kind of expenditures are you going to have on certain qualifying programs. And again, it's all estimates for the following school year. In September, your board would have taken action on a preliminary levy. You probably all remember doing that. And that's what gets put into the notices that are mailed to the taxpayers. November 5th, actually, I think it was November 4th this year, is when you hold elections. If you did not have an election on the ballot, but if a district were to have elections, that's the day they would have done that. And then the county mails out their tax statements. Then between November 25th and the 30th is when you hold your truth and taxation hearing and certify the taxes payable for next year. And then actually in 2026, I can see I have an old slide here, I apologize, is when the property taxes are collected from taxpayers themselves. And that would be payments that, if you still have a mortgage or if you have the home and you receive your statement, they are due in May and then in October of 2026. The timeline for taxpayers is a little bit different, and this is probably more important for any constituents who are watching this. So in March 2025, every resident who owns property in your district would have received a valuation notice for their piece of property. And during the spring and summer of 2025 would have been the time that a resident could go and appeal what that value is by the county assessor. So we're past that time right now. And then November 10th through the 24th is when county auditors across the state are required to mail out those property tax statements. Again, not only does the school district have to hold a truth and taxation hearing, but the city and the county does as well. And then in March of 2026, that's when all the entities start receiving their tax dollars from the taxpayers as well. One piece I want to show again is this is what the levy would have looked like, a sample statement of what everybody would have been mailed out with. And you would see on this statement the different amounts of taxes by the city, by the county, and by the school district. When we look at this for your school district, it's important to know, what the valuation is on a piece of property to how much tax they're going to pay. And here's the trend over the last 8-year period of time. And you can see that, for your district, you've had some significant bumps, 4.5% here in 2018, almost 8% in 2019, et cetera, as we follow along. So you're in that 5 to 6% range. And then in 2023, your valuation increased by over 19%, which honestly is a little bit, not much, but a little bit lower than what the state average was that year. The state average was closer to 21, 22%. So you're right in that ballpark, but you were just a little bit below. 2024 was another big year of valuation increases. Your district had a 10% increase. You went down back to kind of your normal average of 5% last year. And then for taxes payable next year, the values again are showing that they're going up again. So, 8.5%, which of course is great if you're trying to sell your piece of property, right? The value of your piece of property has been growing quite a bit. So that means your resale price has grown quite a bit. But how that divides up amongst how much tax you pay, can have an effect. And I'll kind of show you as we go along. So oftentimes when we're doing these presentations, if somebody does show up to the hearing, they actually are taught, they have more of a conversation about what their piece of property is worth. And they're, they want to know what they can do about that. And while it's not the school district's responsibility on, assessing the property and saying what the value of it is, I want you just to have a little bit of knowledge so that you can direct people in, the right way. They certainly are going to go back to the county for sure. But if they go back to the statement that they received back in March that said this is what the value of their piece of property was, on the back of that statement, it shows all of the options they have if they want to contest what that value is. Now, as I mentioned before, most of that has already expired for taxes that are going to be paid in 2026. There was an appeal process that could have been done, but that would have been done in the spring and summer. This late in the game, the only thing left for them to do would be to go to tax court. So they could go to tax court if they want to appeal, the value of their property, but that's their last step. So what most people would do is just have an awareness that when they get this valuation statement next March, in March of 2026, they know that that's the time to take action. And oftentimes it's honestly as easy as calling up, the county auditor's office and saying, hey, my property I think is wrong. And the county auditor and the assessor would then look at those values and make a judgment call at that point in time. I mean, it can be as simple as that. There are other steps involved there that you can take, but the first step is honestly very easy. It's just a phone call, or you go to the county officer itself and have a conversation. Anyways, that's just some background information that I think board members, it's good if you're equipped with that information. So then we could look at the tax levy itself, and how is that going to be applied to different properties. So here's a piece of information for looking at your district. When we look at the values of all the pieces of property in your district, that's this column right here, and you have roughly 38% of all the value is based on residential pieces of property. We actually can add this next column. This very small yellow piece is agricultural HGA, which stands for the house, garage, and 1 acre. So if you own some ag land, the first acre in your house is actually treated like a residential piece of property. So we can actually call it roughly 43% of all your property is valued as residential. Then you have a very large, and I know it's not a surprise to you, but 38% of the value in your district is ag land. So that's the buildings and land outside of the first acre and house. And then you have a fairly small amount of commercial industrial at 7.5%. And then you have 11% that's valued at seasonal recreational. And why that's important to understand what those are is because based on what you are levying, different pieces of property pay tax on that. So when we look at referendum market value, and we'll look at this in another slide here shortly, that's what gets set for your operating referendum that you went to, and what's also called the local optional revenue, or LOR revenue. And your ag land is excluded from paying tax on that portion of your levy, as is the seasonal rec. So that means instead of 38% of your residential, splitting up the pie based on that, residential is carrying 75% of the taxes that are taxed on referendum market value. And I'll show you that on another slide here. Whereas the rest of your levy is based on net tax capacity, where everybody pays, and then you can kind of see how it's split up, that way as well. Commercial and industrial gets hit a little bit harder on the net tax capacity. So when we look at your levy for 2026, we see this is what you levied back in 2025, $1,284,407. What you're expected to take action tonight is levying $1,296,548. Oh, I'm sorry, that's its debt service. My fault. Let me give you the right numbers. Last year you levied $3,531,666. You're expected to levy $3,620,006 this coming year, so an increase of $88,000 or 2.5%. That would be your total increase. And we're going to break out some of this by, what were some of those major changes? Well, you have an additional $16,000 that you are going to receive in additional revenue. And that's based on your capital projects referendum. And if board members remember, when you went to the voters for that, you're setting that at a tax rate. So you're going to have, you're levying, so much percentage for every value of tax capacity in your district. And as that tax capacity grows, that means you get a larger dollar amount. Your local optional revenue, you're going to levy $17,567 more. And I'm going to show you this on another slide. It doesn't mean that you're getting any more money on this one, though. It just means that you are getting less state aid and your local taxpayers are paying more of the pie. So this first one, you actually are getting $16,000 more revenue. This one, you're getting the same amount of revenue, but the local taxpayers have to pay a bigger portion of it. And then this last one I just wanted to highlight as well is you're levying $4,000 more in that reemployment insurance. And again, board members may remember that a year ago, the state changed the reemployment laws so that many more people are qualify for that, which means there's more expense for the school district because of that change in law. So as I mentioned, the change in the tax levy does not necessarily mean a change in how much revenue you're receiving as a district. And that's because what we call as equalization or the state aid. In very simple terms, the state says, okay, what's your total property valuation? We're going to divide that by how many students you have. And if that number goes up higher, we're going to give you less state aid, and we're going to say the local taxpayers can pay more because they consider you a wealthier district. You have more property wealth per student than you did last year. So we as a state don't need to pay as much. You can have your own thoughts whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, but that's just how the formula works. So I put this out as an example for you. Back in 2025, your local optional revenue, you received $702,000. Next year, you're going to receive $703,000. So roughly the same amount of money. But last year you levied only $659,000. This year, you're going to levy $677,000 to your local taxpayers because your state aid portion went down from $42,000 to $26,000. So in other words, again, based on the formulas, the state said, well, your local taxpayers can pay $17,000 more of this bill because you're wealthier now. Okay, so that's just how the formula works. Then when we look at taking, okay, so your total levy is going to be a certain dollar amount. And now how are we going to split that out amongst all the different property, properties in your district? And I showed you this example, I think, for the first time last year to make it as simple as possible. I said, okay, well, let's say you were a district and you were levying $100 and you only had two pieces of property in the entire district and they both were valued at the same amount, $100,000 each. They each would then pay 50% of that total $100, and so it's $50 each. Okay. And then next year, you still only wanted to levy $100. And this house went up by 20%. So now the value is to $120,000. And this house also went up by 20%. So $120,000. Many people think that if my house value went up, my taxes are going to go up. Well, in this case, it's not. It just means how are we going to split the pie? Well, they both have the same value still. And so they both would only pay 50% of that property tax bill. So they would still only have $50 each. But in this scenario, if I'm going on the right-hand side here, if this house only went up 10% and this house went up 40%, now we're going to split the pie a little bit differently. So in this case, this house would pay $58 and this house would pay $42 of it. So even though this house went up by 10%, they actually would have a tax decrease because it didn't go up as much as the other property in the district. And then without going to a lot of detail, it just gets more complicated when we add these other pieces to it. So if we add ag land to it and we add commercial and industrial and everything gets split up, now we're splitting up the pie a lot differently based on who's paying what and how much value is increased for different pieces as well. So I want to just to let you know, you are levying a set dollar amount based on what the legal law is. How it gets divided up is really the Minnesota tax system. If your property wealth goes up, it doesn't mean that you as a homeowner are going to necessarily pay more. It's all relative to what's happening with other homeowners and what's happening to ag land in your district and what's happening in commercial industrial district. Okay. So now we look at a house for taxes payable in 2026. If the home value on that house was valued at $300,000, they would be paying $888 in school district taxes next year. And if we break that out by components, $154 of that $888 is from the operating referendum that was approved by the voters. $285 would be mostly what the board approves as a local optional revenue, which every district in the state is able to do. $724 for that. And then $304 is for the debt that you were paying off, again, when you went to the voters and asked for voter approval to issue bonds so you could do your construction projects that you did. $26 is for board-approved debt. And then $118 is for the whole rest of a 40-page formula system that goes from everything from community ed to capital levies and a whole bunch of other different levies that are in the mix. So again, if you take the $154 and the $304, $458, so a little bit more than half of the levy has been approved by voters when you went to the voters at the polls and asked them for authority. So when we put that into a chart here, I've got, a lot of different types of property and different values. I want to point this out to make sure you understand this. If I were to look at a $300,000 home for next year, that's what the current value is. We're using an 8.6% increase in value because that's what the trend is in your district. That home would have been worth $276,000 last year. Last year, that $276,000 home would have paid $853. With the increase going to $300,000, that home now would pay $888 or a $34 increase, for the entire year. Okay, so that's how this chart reads, and you can look at it for ag land or for commercial industrial as well. So what's going to happen? Every district on average, I'm saying or the homes are going to go up roughly that 8%, but every home won't. So what happens if my home didn't go up at all, if it stayed the same? Well, in that case, that $300,000 home, is actually going to go down roughly $50. Okay. Or what happens if I'm on the other end of the spectrum? Instead of my home going up by 8% kind of on average, it actually doubled that. It went by 17%. Well, then we're looking at, $108, increase. So I'm just kind of giving you some goalposts on either side. It could, most property doesn't get devalued, but it could stay at the same value. And in that case, you're going to get a decrease. If it goes up the average, you're going to have a pretty small increase. But, there will be some homes that did some additions or something on them and they went up, a larger amount. And so that's where it'd be. So everybody's going to have their own experience, but you kind of see the range of what will happen in your district. Here's the trend for you for the last 8 years. And again, what I'm doing is I'm saying a home that's now valued at $300,000, 8 years ago, that home in your district would have had a value of $182,000. And that same home would have paid $575 in taxes 8 years ago, and now they're paying $888. And you can see for the last 4 years, it was pretty consistent. But back in 2022 is when you went to the voters and you asked for the operating referendum, and they approved it. And that's why it increased here. And you can actually see that by the colors. Back here, you had virtually nothing of an operating referendum. And then when you went to the voters, you can see this blue part down the bottom. That's what's making the tax increase go up for the last 4 years. But it's been consistent since then as well. And again, you as a board didn't make the taxes go up. You went to the voters and asked, is this okay so we can support our schools? And they said yes. The last thing I have here, I think, is just to remind you of how the ag to school credit works. So on the bonds that you're paying off, the ag land gets credit from the state. And for you, that means that it's 18% of all your bond debt is being paid by the state as opposed to your local taxpayers. And of the $1,296,000 of debt service payments that you're going to be paying next year, $232,000 of that is paid by this ag to school credit. So paid by taxpayers throughout the entire state, are contributing to your district to help pay that off. This is the tax trend then for ag land as well. So similar to the residential, but seeing how much this is per acre. And then the last slide I have here is just a resource slide that shows that people can go to the state website and look at these tax programs to see if they qualify. And there's a lot of good, healthy programs out there that many people can take advantage of. But it does take the taxpayer to go out and fill out, forms, et cetera, to see if they qualify for those. So tonight, you need to approve a levy dollar amount to the exact dollar that you want to approve. According to your levy certification, that number would be $3,620,006. And so with that, I'll turn it over back to the chair, Madam Chair, for public comment and before you take your action on approving the levy.
Okay. Do you have any public comment?
I believe so.
Okay, so we have no public comment, so then do I move for a motion to certify it?
You sure can. Yep.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the pay 2026 levy of $3,620,006.
motion by Thomas,
Second.
second by Bruce. And this is a roll call vote.
Can I just pause? The actual levy amount is 05.90.
$3,620,005.90.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle.
You're welcome. Miranda?
Roll call vote.
Sorry, I was muted. Ron,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yep.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Hearing nothing, motion passes.
All right.
Very good. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, moving on to the first meeting in January action.
So at the November work session, we talked about just the heads up that we needed to set the January board meeting. So taking a look at everything that we have on the calendar, my recommendation was for board members to consider Tuesday, January 13th at 6 p.m. for the organizational meeting, immediately followed by the work session. So
We always used to do it that way.
great.
So I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bruce,
I'll second.
second by Jacob. Roll call vote.
Ron,
Roll call vote on the moving.
Yeah, I know, I'm looking at a calendar. Yeah, I guess. Yep.
Okay,
Rachel,
aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Hearing nothing, motion passes. Moving on to the paraprofessional master agreement.
Okay, and I prepared a summary for you that I'll share, and I'll invite members who are on the negotiating committee to add in any details if you would like to. The first section of the document is just the language provisions. The entire contract dates were updated. And due to some changes in insurance structure with brokerage fees for the 25-26 school year, there's not going to be an excess contribution to an employee's VIVA should that occur. We've been working with our health partners, and trying to determine how to come into compliance with some changes to practices. So that's why that came in, and it's purely for the 25-26 school year. Leaves of absence, there was a revision made around the discretionary leave front loading. And so for probationary employees that are hired after January 1st, all leave will accumulate versus being front loaded. Non-probationary staff will maintain that front loading leave allocation. Article 8, the leave of absence, 9, leave of absence is removal of earned, safe, and sick time reference. So if you think back to the last contract negotiations, all of our units and the board worked really hard to try to differentiate what was going to be discretionary leave and earned safe and sick time, and then maintained sick leave as a separate bucket. Legislatively, there were changes, so all leave provisions fall under the earned safe and sick time category. So it made it really kind of unnecessary to differentiate what was earned safe and sick time and sick leave. And so to clean up that language, it was the ESST reference was removed where it was unnecessary. Also, discretionary leave, there used to be a provision of a 1 hour minimum. And what we found was that was inhibiting the ability to get subs or cover for an entire class period, because an employee would take an entire hour if they even only needed 15 minutes. And so that seems to make sense on both sides. So the leave increment can be 15 minutes instead of an hour. The provision of this contract did not have a reference to Family Medical Leave Act. So there was that reference made, which is really around following the federal FMLA language. And then there was also on Article 9, there was just a professional leave use. It referenced sick leave and personal leave. And so that came back into discretionary leave. So that language was clarified. In regards to financials, health and hospitalization insurance, you'll see the increase in 25-26 to a single premium is covered, and then the family contribution is commensurate, and then an increase for the 26-27 school year by $500 for both plans. And then there's the language in the contract, which is for the VIVA. It's all the language of ordering for all the contribution language. The dollars are reflected and updated, which is Section 8 of that contract. If you recall, during the pay equity discussion, it was confirmed that our paraprofessionals had some work to do. So the salary schedule was restructured for the 25-26 school year. And the starting wage is for our paraprofessionals is $17, and there are 9 steps, and the top step would be $21.52. And then the starting wage for a nurse paraprofessional is $17.55, again with 9 steps, with a high wage of $22.07. So that brings us then second year is a 1% to the salary schedule, and then longevity change was no change for 25-26, and 10 cents per longevity step increment for 26-27. So you will see it is a substantial package from what we normally see within this unit. But we do recognize that we had a lot of work to do within that unit to be comparable, and not only comparable to our employment group, but also our neighboring and surrounding communities. So that's the summary of the paraprofessional contract, and I would stand for questions unless other board members who are on the negotiating committee would like to add more.
I don't need to add any more.
No, that's Gerald, very well put, Janelle, thank you.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
I make a motion to introduce and approve paraprofessional master agreement 25 through 2027.
Motion by Thomas,
I'll second.
second by Jacob. Roll call vote.
Ron,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I forgot to add the memorandum of agreement for e-learning is in there as well. I forgot to say that because it was not listed in my apologies for that. If you take a look at the memorandum of agreement, it is identical to what it has been in the years past, and it spans for the 2 years, just like we did for the certified staff. So I don't know. So Thomas, do you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, make amendment to the motion to include memorandum of agreement for e-learning paraprofessionals.
And we need a second.
I think you do.
Okay.
I'll second again.
Okay, second by Jacob. And then do we need another roll call?
I think you do.
Okay, another roll call vote for the
Ron,
amendment.
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Hearing no no's, motion passes. Moving on to the food service master agreement.
So I have prepared a summary for the food service master agreement as well. So let me share that. And again, board members who are part of the food service negotiations, please feel free to add anything that you would like to expound upon. All dates also have been changed to reflect the 25-27 contract there, and where it was applicable, the sections were renumbered. There was an added section for Article 8, a subdivision allocating 2 personal days from their discretionary leave allocation. So really what the intent of this was not to add more days, but to allow a little bit of flexibility for circumstances where they needed to take a day, maybe in September, and they hadn't had an opportunity for that to be accrued. So that was, again, not additional days, but it came from the allocation of discretionary leave. Article 8, Section 2, Subdivision 3, revised language to reference statutory eligible absences, as did Subdivision 2. So both Subdivision 2 and 3 referenced statute. Article 8, Section 7, Family Medical Leave. This section was added to, again, reference compliance with federal law. And Article 8, Section 8 is a reference to be in compliance with Minnesota paid leave. And staff development was added as a reference to paid training, just to make sure that our food service workers have an opportunity to collaborate on their the professional development that they receive in the fall is pertinent to them as well. In financials, you'll see that they have a goal, achieving goals that are set with the superintendent, and that increased from 10 cents an hour to 20 cents an hour. There was an added holiday of President's Day, and the health and hospitalization insurance increased to $8,345.76, and then the second year to $8,495.76. And then the rates are also reflected in Section 10, which is again the compliance language for the VIVA distribution. Salary schedule is 3% on year 1, 3% on year 2. Longevity for year 2 increases each increment by 20 cents for a total package of 7.95% over 2 years. So board members that are part of that committee, if there's anything you'd like to add.
I think
That's good.
very good.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Nope. Okay.
All right, this is Gerald. I make a motion to approve the food services contract for the 25 to 27 school years.
Motion by Gerald,
Second.
second by Bruce. Roll call vote.
Ron,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Hearing no opposed, motion passes. Review of upcoming meetings.
Well, if something were to happen with staff, school day tomorrow with staff development.
It would be
just
rescheduled.
Yeah, okay. Just confirm that, I figured.
Meet and confer had to be rescheduled today, so that it'd be the same. Yep.
But the negotiations would still go, right?
If school is not in session, negotiation,
reschedule.
it would be rescheduled.
Okay.
Correct.
Just thought I'd ask that question because,
Yep. Nope, that's fair.
okay. Hearing nothing more, looking for a motion to close the meeting to evaluate superintendent.
This is Gerald. I make a motion to close the meeting, go into closed session.
Motion by Gerald,
This is Cheryl. I'll second that motion.
second by Cheryl. Roll call vote.
Ron,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Cheryl.
Aye.
Hearing no opposed, we move to close the meeting at 6:49 PM.
Okay, letter H.
Okay, we are back in open session, so we're looking for a motion to open the meeting back up.
So move.
Motion by Bruce,
A second.
second by Cheryl. Then it's a roll call, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll call Rachel.
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Ron,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
Gerald,
Aye.
Hearing no opposed, we are back in open session. So then, do I read the statement or does somebody read the statement?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you read the statement.
Okay. We are back in open session. The Board of Education with all members present closed the meeting to evaluate the superintendent on 12/9/25. We recognize the superintendent has met or exceeded the expectations around communication and community relationships. The board looks forward to the strategic planning updates. That's a whirl. Okay,
And I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
motion by Thomas. Second by Jacob. Roll call vote.
Rachel,
Aye.
Thomas,
Aye.
Bruce,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Ron,
Aye.
Cheryl,
Aye.
Gerald.
Aye.
Hearing no motion is adjourned, or excuse me, meeting is adjourned.